So that was from Tosca by Puccini.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me a little bit about the Italians and these great famous composers and how that leads into other countries like Germany and how does that develop as opera continues to develop?
Yeah, well, even from the beginning with that Camerata in Florence who thought it up, this particular version of music drama as an art form, the Italians kind of reigned supreme for 100 years in terms of the composers and the works they created. And then that Italian opera became popular in France, in Germany, in Russia, in England. And sometimes these opera companies from Italy would be imported to those countries to perform Italian opera. And then gradually, homegrown versions of opera sprung up in Germany, France, England, Russia. And then the native composers composed operas in their own languages, which is really how it spread throughout Europe. But the Italian, it's funny because the Italian reign has never stopped. A lot of people think of Italian as the perfect opera language because it's so musical to begin with. Every word ends in a vowel, and it has a kind of melodic, sing-songy rhythm to the language anyway. So that's how it kind of spread around the world and eventually spread to the United States, where we have a whole 100-plus year history of our own opera composers, as well as England with great composers like Benjamin Britten, and other countries too, like Czechoslovakia and composers like Janacek and Hungary, Dvorak. It spread all over the place and got more and more popular.
So, speaking of the Italians, here we first come to our first male singer, and one that everybody has heard of.
Yeah, Luciano Pavarotti was one of the greats, and in fact, for so long, because of the fame of the Three Tenors concert that was first done in the 80s with Luciano Pavarotti, Placido Domingo, and Jose Carreras, they were kind of labeled the big three. And in some people's minds, no one since those three, even though Placido is still performing in his 70s, nobody has come up to match their fame and popularity worldwide. There are popular, great tenors today, but in terms of superstardom that transcends all realms of popular culture, I think that nobody has come to rule like Luciano Pavarotti did. And, he was born with the most gorgeous, gifted voice. His father was a singer and was his main opera teacher, singing teacher. And he had a glorious career. And I was lucky enough to work with him several times, both in San Francisco at the opera and at the Met. And something very special.
Now, you told me about one time about standing next to him during a rehearsal and getting that up close sense of his volume, what he could create.
Yeah, it could blow your ears off how loud his voice was. I also remember this funny incident once. Every singer has their own kind of habits and peccadillos about how to keep the voice fresh, and they have their own versions of, what is the magic elixir. And I'll never forget my surprise when standing in the wings one day during a rehearsal at the Met of I Lombardi, this lesser-known opera by Verdi. And he was performing, and he came off stage at a certain moment and grabbed this half kind of peeled apple from his assistant, and he chomped on this apple, like chomp, 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 taking big bites of the apple. Then his assistant, this young woman who later became his second wife, handed him a glass of water. He swirled the water around in his mouth, and then he just spit the whole thing out all over the backstage floor, chewed up apple water and everything. And he said, "Okay, now I'm ready to go back on."
That's amazing.
And that was his version of like keeping his voice fresh.
Well, it's like the sour in the apple is going to open up all the chambers for him, right? The nasal passages.
The antihistamine, I mean, quality in the apple. Yeah, fascinating. Yeah. And a great anecdote to tell you about, the quirky things that musicians and singers need to do to, once they've learned their instrument and the unique, qualities that it has and what it needs to realize its full potential.
And a diva was born, right?
Yeah, and as opposed to all real instruments, this is part of your body. So every part of your health and your state of physical being, affects how those two vocal cords are going to work, whether they're going to work well enough or not.
By far the most difficult instrument to tour.
Yeah, and a lot of singers are very neurotic about their health. I mean, and they need to be, because they have the instrument that are two little fleshy cords in their throat.
And their whole destiny's riding on this little thing, right?
Yeah, their whole career.
I mean, also, just the thing of you've got to perform tonight and you've got a little sniffle, you've got a little cold, and that could bring down the whole thing.
Most singers, in fact, carry with them their own version of the doctor's medical bag with each one has their own version of all the medications they might need in case they're catching a sniffle, in case they have allergies, in case it's too dry in the room. Yeah.
Hypochondria paradise.
It does breed that.
Right.
But it's also kind of justified hypochondria.
Yeah, sure.
Indeed, it is.
So tell us what we're going to hear from Pavarotti.
So Luciano's going to sing La Donna è mobile from Rigoletto by Verdi. And La Donna è mobile can be translated as women are fickle.
Okay, no comment. Here we go.